Today, I am so excited that I have the pleasure of interviewing Eva O'Keefe. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
So, let me tell you guys a little bit more about Eva. She graduated from the University of Florida with dual degrees in industrial and systems engineering. Later, she attended the Graziadio School of Business at Pepperdine University, where she earned her MBA. She is currently the VP of Sales at Azelis. So, tell us, how did you go from 2 degrees to becoming the VP of Sales?
Yeah, so obviously it didn't happen overnight. I started my career actually, my degrees in industrial and systems engineering. And my first job was actually working for Exxon. And I was actually doing hardcore computer programming. I spent my first year at the basement of the Exxon building programming C++ and doing all these things. I was 22 years old and I was like, okay, this is not for me. I am a people person. I would go to the supermarket and I would start chatting with a cash register lady and things. So a friend of mine asked me, hey, there is a job in chemical sales. I was living at that time in the Houston area. So I'm like, I don't know much about chemical sales. I did take some chemistry classes during college, but I think I want to get into sales. So I started in sales and I did that for a couple of years in the pulp and paper industry. Then I moved to chemical sales in selling for more like paint companies. Then actually, I was born and raised in Venezuela. So I speak Spanish. The opportunity came to work for Angus, which then became Dow as a Latin American sales manager. So I did that for a couple of years. I actually traveled all over Latin America. I actually learned Portuguese, even though I don't speak that much Portuguese anymore. So went to, the smallest countries, El Salvador, Costa Rica, to the big places like Brazil and Colombia. Then I had some family changes. I got married. I had children, and I went to work for another chemical manufacturer for a couple of years, and my territory was very large. I had 12 Western states, Western Canada, sometimes Mexico. So after starting a family, I decided, okay, let me go something smaller. So I went into chemical distribution. And at the same time, actually, I decided to get my MBA. So I was trying to do it all, having a family, getting my MBA, traveling. And so I got into chemical distribution. Chemical distribution is different because you have a smaller geographical area, a lot more accounts. And I started basically as an account manager, and quickly I was promoted as sales manager. And I managed a team, and I did that for a couple of years. Then I went to work for a competitor, and I was actually vice president of strategic accounts, which I was giving them one very, very, very large account. Then my company was sold, and then I went to work for actually the same company that I worked 10 years ago, actually 15 years ago in 2005. And my original role here was actually vice president for Latin America, which I did for a few months. And then they said, you know what, I think your skill set is better suited to manage a territory. So I'm now vice president of sales for the Western region, which covers 12 Western states. So that's kind of my career in a nutshell.
So you had such a dynamic career because you went from being just a traditional engineer to something completely different of chemical sales. And then you kept on that path of doing something different by getting into distribution, which I always say distribution sales is a world unto its own because you're managing someone else that's not under your tutelage, and they're managing the customers. So what are the things that you think that really set you up for success going from being a engineer working in a basement and the skills that you've been able to translate into your leadership position?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is I understood early on that this was not my right path, So I think understanding yourself, and taking that risk, just saying, you know what, I'm comfortable here, but this is not what I want. So I think that's one of the things. Hard work. I mean, there's nothing, I have kids right now. I have a 16-year-old and an almost 19-year-old, and they think that they are just going to walk in and be vice president of sales. And we're like, no, it just kind of doesn't work like that. It just sheer spending the time, getting my MBA. I think my training as an engineer, I knew, processes and things like that. But in reality, unless you're working for Tesla or SpaceX or something like that, you're dealing in business with customers, profits, P&Ls, and things like so. I think my MBA, was critical in basically teaching me how to think, and teaching me about strategy and teaching me is like, okay, do I want to be the Neiman Marcus selling a couple of things at a very high margin, or do I want to be Walmart, or do I want to be somewhere in between? All those things I learn at my MBA. So I personally, I know they're kind of, not as viewed as favorable anymore, but for a technical person, and I tell the young people under me, if you have the time, your company's paying for it, do it. Do it. It was a very big sacrifice. Like I said, I had, I already one child, expecting the other. But I felt that it was very much worth it. And, I think continuing your skills, I just finished a leadership course at Cornell, talking about women in leadership. I listened to a lot of podcasts, how I built this. My son is starting at Northwestern. I found some very interesting podcasts there. So just don't think that you're ever done learning. If you consider yourself a lifelong learner, in every interaction, in my company, even though I'm in sales, I have to deal with supply chain. I have to deal with customer service. And every interaction, if I learn about their business and how they do their job, it helps me do my job better. Interpersonal connections, I think that's very important. I think in my industry, I think people will hopefully view me as someone that is very generous, very, generous with her time. I invite people into my home. Back when we were entertaining a lot more, I did a lot of entertaining, a lot of socializing, building not just the business. I have a mentor. His name is Syriac Alexander. He's very well known in our industry. And he always said, companies do business with people, not companies with companies. So developing those personal relationships early on. And I still have relationships that I've kept for almost 30 years in this industry. I think that's very important.
That's awesome. You talked a lot about personal and professional development. And I think a lot of times as leaders, that's not something that we value as much because we're going as a sales leader. We're like, okay, I got to hit this number, got to get the team doing this, I got that. But really taking time to slow down and do that development, it seems like it's really played measures for you in your career. So I'm curious, when we think about your team and the people that you work with, how is that development, that growth that you have so inherent within you, how does that help you lead your team better?
Yeah, I mean, again, I think I'm a firm believer. For example, I belong to the Los Angeles Society of Coatings Technology. I'm on the board. I've given them a 6-year commitment. Anyone that goes under me, it's like, okay, you are joining the LASCT and you are becoming a board member, and at the LASCT, for example, every single month we have technical talks that we learn. So again, to me, that is very important. And it's very important for the people that work for me to have that mindset about learning. If someone is, for example, I do get some people that work for me that various technical levels. I will get someone with an engineering degree and I will get someone with a marketing degree. The guy with the marketing degree, he knows how to sell well, but maybe is not as versed in the technical aspect. So again, send them to a lab where he spends a week immersed in technical training and understanding. I think that people should always recognize what are their weaknesses and go and try to improve that. Is the person with a marketing degree going to be as technically proficient as the guy that spent, 10 years in a manufacturing plant creating polymers? No. But it doesn't matter, and also understanding that there are resources available. None of us work in a vacuum. That if you're weak in one area, pair yourself up with someone that is not weak in that area. And having that collaboration, I think makes the team a lot stronger.
I love that. I always, when I'm working with people, one thing that we do is we come up with an onboarding plan. And when we're working in these technical fields, there are always two tracks. There's a technical track and then there's the sales or the business track, because depending on your background, sometimes, like you said, you need to go in the lab and you need to say, hey, let me present this to someone. Let me go out and get my hands dirty. I always like to say getting my hands dirty, like go out on the plant floor or go in the lab and really learn the process, because you're strong in sales. So we don't need to develop those skills as much. Whereas if you're a technical person by nature, then we do need to hone those sales skills. You need to be cold calling and talking to customers and doing all of those things. And so really what you said, I love the way that you're individualizing the development for your salespeople. What are some of the challenges that you've had throughout your leadership career?
Early on, I would say, how do I put it this politely? I was traveling to Latin America as a young female, 29 years old, as a manager, and they were basically, I was not being accepted. And many times, some of the distributors there would say, hey, I do not want to spend time with you, or bring your boss or something like that. So I think that was pretty challenging, and I felt that I had to prove myself quite a bit. The other challenges is I think mentoring people to the point that they want to stay, but the grass is always greener on the other side. And spending time with someone, spending love and attention and care, and then they get a better offer, and you say, okay, this is business, I don't want to take it personal, but you do take it personal, and you feel it's like, what happened? What did I do wrong? Why couldn't this person stay with me? So I think some of those, and the environment, I mean, the last year for everyone, we had to learn completely how to work in a different way. I was used to every week getting on a plane and travel, and now we're home, and we're like, okay, but I think we've learned quite a bit, and we've learned that also there is a lot more collaboration and efficiency. That you can immediately get the person in New Jersey, the person in Argentina, and the person in California, and all, be together at once. Things that a year ago, before the pandemic, you just didn't do that. It was not normal. And challenges also, I think that as my personal and professional development is like, okay, I've been doing this for almost 30 years. It's like, what do I do when I grow up? Where do I want to go? I think you have to ask yourself those type of questions over and over again.
Those are some good real life challenges, right? Being a woman in this very technical chemical sales type realm, especially when you're traveling to other countries. I think in different countries, there are different perceptions. And as you said, that we have to think about the culture of things. So when you're traveling to Latin America, it's culturally like, no, 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 this is not what we do. And then having that turnover, especially in these days where, I mean, if you're a good salesperson, you're like a hot commodity. Everybody's trying to steal you. And it's when you get to a salesperson and they leave for 5,000 or 10,000 or 3 or 4% more commission, like you said, it's, what did I do? Did I do something wrong? Why are you leaving? And then really thinking about this virtual world. Okay, yeah, it's very different, but these are the ways that we can actually build our business faster. We can meet with people quicker. We can be on back-to-back Zoom calls. Like I can start my day in London and I can end my day in California, right? And I think those things, what you really said is, it's like, yeah, these are challenges, but they're all things that I overcame and they've made me stronger.
Absolutely. Actually, I have a little funny example. I was talking to this gentleman that I've talked to him a couple of times, and all of a sudden he mentioned something about being in Argentina. And I'm like, wait a minute, you are in Argentina? I had no idea. I thought that he was in Charlotte, North Carolina or something like that. So
I love it. I love it. I mean, in the world that we're living in today, it's a global world, but it seems like we're so much tighter knit. Like in this past week, I've talked to somebody in London, I've talked to somebody in Lebanon, I've talked to somebody in Norway, and I've also talked to somebody right here in Texas, all on Zoom, right? And so I think that being able to embrace what I like to call sales technology and helping our salespeople really upskill, right? So it's, yes, we can do it as leaders, but are we showing our salespeople how they can actually use this to build their business?
correct.
So to give me a success story, whether it's in your current position or in a previous position that you had, on something that you're really excited about, a person, a sale, anything that you're really excited about.
Well, I can actually start. I will go back to when I first started in sales in my career. I was mid-20s, okay? And the product that I was selling I was actually selling one specific product. And when I came over here, we had very, very, very little market share. I would say, I don't know, 5% market share. So basically the way this product worked, do you know what pH is? The pH, it works at a higher pH. The product that was in the market worked at a lower pH. So I would actually go into Home Depot and buy paint, and I would send it to my lab and I would have it analyzed. And I would go to all these major corporations making paint and I would say, do you think your product is protected? And they would say, of course it is. I've been using, this product, and so I would actually go and show them the data. It's like, hey, your product is really not protected. And when the homeowner opens this can of paint and a year later puts it in the garage and wants to paint again, is not going to be protected. So I went and I methodically went to all these companies pitching the message over and over and over again. And by the time in 2-3 years, I went from like 5% market share to probably, 70, 75. And 20 years later, okay, a lot of these companies are still using the product that I recommended, and are still basically my recommendations kind of shape that industry. And I think I was young and naive, and a lot of the times I remember one gentleman said, what makes you think that you're going to gain my business? I've been doing business with this large company for all these years. We play golf with, but I think that my young age and my naivete basically said, I don't care, Another time, again, talking about developing the personal relationships, I believe in the personal relationship. This same gentleman, which basically brushed me off and, I got his business at the end. He asked me, he said that he was sponsoring a run or a race for the, instead of the Juvenile Diabetes Foundation, we did it for paint, for the paint, foundation, but it was for diabetics. And he's like, okay, I hear that you run. I said, yeah, I do. He's like, okay, can you run this race for me? And I said, his name was Marty. I said, Marty, I don't know if I can run this race. And he's like, why? I said, well, because if I run the race, I want to win it, And he's like, all right, okay, come on. So I go run the race and I win it. I won the race, So he was like, okay, this lady is serious. Mm-hmm. And after that, he was so happy that I won the race. I developed my personal relationship with him. I raised a bunch of money for his charity. And eventually I got his business. My product was superior. And like I said, to this day, they're using this product. But, it took persistence. It took, basically, sometimes you think, well, someone has done it already, and they failed. Well, that was them. That's not me. Just because they failed doesn't mean that I'm going to fail. I'm going to look at a different angle. I'm going to find another way. And so I think early on in my career, I had a lot of success by just chipping away little by little.
Tenacity. I love that story where it's you really were thinking outside the box, right? You're like, I'm just going to Home Depot and I'm going to buy all their stuff up and hey, send it off and send me the results. I can remember as my first year in sales, I was like, I don't know what to do. They didn't give me a framework. So I would load up my car and I would literally fly to Colorado and I would be driving all over the Midwest. And then I would hop up to North Dakota and I was just doing lunch and learns, right? And so I would literally have a whole week of lunch and learns scheduled at universities, at client sites. And that's how the momentum got going, right? And it's that, like you said, it's the tenacity. It's not that they're going to buy tomorrow, but it's the fact that, hey, I'm staying with it. And then I love your story about the charity, because what you did was, and I tell salespeople all the time, you served before you sold, right? You served him. This is important to you, so I can make it important to me. And again, and it wasn't just because you had such a great relationship. You solved a problem that he had with your item, with your product, and the relationship was there. And so I think a lot of times as salespeople, they think that they can only live on the relationship. But no, what is the problem that the customer's having, right? Those two have to be aligned in order for you to build that relationship. I love it.
Well, thank you.
Tell us, how can people get in contact with you if they want to have a quick chat with you or learn more about what you do?
Sure. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn. I would say that would be the preferred method under Eva O'Keefe. So I'm in social media too. I think Twitter, I'm like Evita 1209 or something like that. But I think LinkedIn would be the preferred method.
Awesome. Eva, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing your pearls and your wisdom and really helping us understand how you have gone from working in the basement in ExxonMobil here in Houston, where I am, yes, to being this wonderful VP of sales. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you for interviewing me. Thanks for the time.